Hello everyone, welcome back. In this video, we're going to talk about HTMLDOM and how we change things inside of our HTML page using our JavaScript. For better and fully understand this part, you need to have watched our HTML and CSS full video that is going to be linked in the top corner and description you can watch. So please watch that first and then come to see the continue of this video. Until now, we have learned lots of things about JS that we can do multiple things with, but how we actually going to show this and use this inside of our page. So first things that we have right here is our simple HTML page, which here after our body tag, I want to add my JavaScript right here, which is going to be index.js. And here we have empty JavaScript file right here. In JavaScript, we have object model of document, which by using that, we can access to our HTML. So what I mean is that think of every tag here is child of parent tag, and every one of these are going to be objects. So for example, here we have this HTML, inside of that we have this head, and inside of that we have this meta title, and we have this body to be inside of our HTML too. Think of this way that we have our HTML, then inside of that we're going to have head, and inside of that we're going to have meta and title right here, and other thing that we have in HTML is going to be this body. So this is how we have structure of our index.html and how we can access them in JavaScript. For example, if we want access to this tag, we're going to access this, then inside of that we're going to select this and this inside. But the thing that we have in JavaScript is that all of these things that we talked about are going to be inside of this document. And this is how it actually is. First, we have this document. Inside of that, we're going to have this HTML, then head and body, and we can have things inside of our body too, which we're going to have, of course, because these are the things that we are showing to the user, and these head information. So here I'm going to run this index.html with this live server that is going to be extension right here, which you can use this to have your HTML files to reload automatically when you do any change into your code. Now let's bring it into our screen. Okay, here let's say we close this head part. So here let's say in our body we're going to have a simple h1 tag with the ID of title, and let's type title right here too. So we got this result right here. But how we should access this? As you know, I told you we're going to use our document right here. So we use this document right here, followed by that, and here we have several methods that we can work with. For example, because we have this ID of title right here, we can use selector of ID in our document object, which is going to be method of getElementById right here, which is going to receive ID from us, then find that ID. And here, this is going to return this tag for us. But what we want to do with this? One of the examples that we can use is this innerHTML right here, which is going to change inside of this tag. So what that value is going to do is change this part right here. For example, let's say we want to make this simple ASD right here. You see that we got changed that right here. And pay attention that this is the property of our tag. And we are defining this like this and not by method syntax. So now let's talk about all of our selectors that we can use and all of our methods that they are going to return element or elements for us. This is selecting by ID. Of course, you saw how it works. After this, we have another method of getElementsByTagname. So we have this getElementsByTagname right here. And here, instead of this, we put the tag name that we have. And here, if we pass this h1, and let's say here we have two h1 with different ID, of course. This is title 2, and this is title 1. It's going to return us both of these two items. So this is going to return us all of the elements with the tag name of h1. And if we want to use them, this is going to return us the array. So we need to use the index that we want. For example, we want first one, and we want the inner HTML of that to be, for example, test right here. Now you see we have changed the first one. And pay attention that this array contains these two h1s. And it can be any tags right here. It's going to return all of that kind and that tags that we have inside of our HTML page for us. And if we select the second one and index of 1 instead of 0, you can see that we're going to change the second one. After this, another thing that we can have, which let's say this is going to be h2 right here, and we have another of h3 right here. But we want to select all of these three tags. You know that we can't have the same ID for all of them, so IDs must be different. And in this case, we don't need these IDs actually. And after that, we have different tag name, and we cannot select them by tag name. So what we can do is we can have our class name to be same in all of these threes. Let's say we want to make the class name the title, and here we use the method of getElementsByClassName, and here we pass the title that we got right there. And again, this is going to return array for us, so we can change all of the elements. Let's say we want the first, which is going to be this h1, and change the inner HTML into number 1. As you see, we got this thing work, and we can select the second one and index of 1, or its last one and index of 2 right here. After this, we have another type of selecting that we can use, which is very useful. And that is going to be our document.querySelectorAll. And what this does is going to find HTML elements by our CSS selectors. So this is going to receive a string of what we use to select our elements in CSS. If we want to select class, we use this dot, then the name that we have right here. So this is selecting all of the elements with the class name of title. And here, if we have index of 0 right here and change the inner HTML to 0, for example, you can see that we got changed the first item with the class name of title. Of course, we can have changed the other ones too, just like this. And let's say here we have two h2s here with the same class name, and we want to select them. What we can do is here we can use this h2.title, and here both of index 0 is going to be this, and index 1 is going to be our second h2 right here. So here we can use our CSS selectors. As well as this, we can have our IDs. Let's say here we have ID of A1, and if we define this ID of A1 into our H1, for example, and select the first one, you can see that we got changed that right here. And after this, we have a bunch of other predefined methods that we can use inside of our JavaScript to get elements of our HTML file. But this is my suggestion to you, to always use these 3 or 4 things that we learned right here, because these are more controllable and we can work with these very easily. Now let's say here we're going to have simple div with the ID of div right here, and we want to select that here inside of our JavaScript. So we use this getElementById, and what we have right here is ID of div. And here I'm going to assign that into this tag variable right here. And what I want to do, I use right here, for example, tag.innerHTML, I want to make that 0. I can use this syntax to maintain code easily. You already know that we have this property of innerHTML inside of our tag, so we can change what it contains here between its tags. And pay attention, we can put anything right here. For example, let's say we want to have this tag right here. We have this text, which again, this is going to be HTML tag. This is going to run. And no matter how we put it, it's going to be run, of course. And let's say here we have some breaks here and then another text. As you see, it's going to run because this is going to simply grab and copy this and come and paste this right here. And by using this, you can see that we have break, and because of that, these are not in the same line. But if we don't have this one right here, you can see we got both of them in the first line. After this, we can change attributes inside of our divs too. So let's say here we have the class name of div1 right here. And here we have this style tag that here we have the class name of color. And by using this, we want the color of the text to be red right here. So if we change this to the color, as you see, we should have this result coming up with the red color. And how we're going to do that using our JavaScript. So here, after we selected our elements right here, we can use name of our attribute as our property. So here, if we use this class name and we equal that with this color, you can see that we got this result because it's going to set the class name to color. And if we check the code that has rendered here inside of our page, if I zoom it a little bit, you can see here inside of our body, our div has the class name of color just right here. And as same as this, we can change other attributes too. For example, let's say here we have anchor tag right here. Let's say this has ID of length right here. So we use to select that, and then we set the href to be, for example, google.com. And by using this here, if we look at our code, you can see that we have this anchor tag with the link that we defined right here. And this is how we change attributes inside of our HTML using our JavaScript. So let's select our div again, and let's talk about next thing that we have, which we can have our dynamic HTML content inside of our HTML. For example, let's say here we have the variable of I with the value of 0 right here. And then we have this setInterval that we learned in the last part. And here we have callback function, which is going to be I++ right here. And then we want this to repeat every 2 seconds. So we pass 2000 milliseconds right here. And pay attention that this is going to be changed, but the other code is going to be run only one time. So if we want to change what we want to print into our HTML page, we need to have that inside of this function. So we use this tag.innerHTML and we set this into this I that we got. Now, if you see, every 2 seconds, we got change inside of our HTML page, And this is going to be changing to 6, 7, and going on because of our code. And this is how we can have dynamic content inside of our HTML page. So let's get rid of these one. After this, we're going to talk about our write method in our document. So we use this document right here. And after this, we have this write right here. And what we pass inside of this write, as you see, is going to render after of our HTML contents. And actually where our script tag is. As you see here, we have that right here. But if we have this above of our text right here, it's going to render right here. So this write is going to directly write this and put this inside of our HTML page, just where we have this script. And of course, we can have anything in HTML format that we want. For example, let's say here we want h1 of test right here. As you see, we got that thing right here. And this is the way that we can add something into our HTML page. The next topic that we're going to talk about is about our form. So let's say here we have our simple form in our HTML, which is going to be this form. Of course, we don't need any action. Here, let's say we have input of number. And then here we have another input of text, as you see right here. And now let's add placeholders for these so we can see which one is which. Okay, now at the last, let's have input type of submit, which is going to be button actually. And this is going to say submit. What we can do is we can validate our inputs in JavaScript. For example, let's say we want this number to be between 0 to 5. So we don't want any numbers right here. What we can do is we can check when we're using this submit if this is that number or not. And how we're going to use that is we can have our validate function right here. Let's actually have that here in our script tag. So we can see both of them in the one place. So here we have this function of validate right here, which is not going to receive anything as parameter. And here we use document dot. Here what we can use to select our form. The first thing that we can have is the name of our form. So we use this forms right here, and we need to pass the name of our form in this syntax right here. But we need to add name for our form first. So let's say this is form 1, and we grab this name and paste this right here. So now we selected our form 1, which is this form right here. And after this, we want to select the input that we want. And for that, again, we need to have the name for us. For example, here, let's say we have the name of number. If we select that, actually, let's make this numbers so it be different from the type. And we copy that. And again, here we use these brackets. And inside of that, we put name for our input. And here, if we use this dot value right here, we're going to see what is inside of this input. But pay attention, this is function and not calling. So this is not going to be run. And because we want this to run, we need to add attribute of onSubmit into our form. So here we're going to have our onSubmit. And here we use our validate function right here. Now, let's say we want to save this to the variable of result, and then we want to alert that result in our page. Now here, if we have number 2 and submit, you can see that we got this number 2. If we have number 234, we got that result. And here we can use JavaScript to check whatever that we want. For example, let's say we want this to be between 0 and 5. So after we got this result, we say if res is larger or equal to 0 and if res is less than or equal to 5. And here we want to alert, for example, submitted, but in the else part, we want to say number is not in the range. And now if we check, if we put number 2 right here, you can see that we got the result of submitted and we have some other numbers, and run. You can see that we got the result of number is not in the range. And you can check anything that you want right here by using this onSubmit attribute right here and passing this function. You can use this function to send requests to APIs, backend, server, or other things, which again we're going to have in our course later. After this, we're going to talk about changing CSS by our JavaScript. We already changed HTML. We have checked the form and validate the form in our HTML. But the thing that we can do is change the CSS. So let's say here we have this paragraph with the ID of A1, which contains some text right here. And here in our head section, we have this style tag, which here we select our paragraph by the ID that we have given to that. And then we set the background color, for example, to blue. And here in our JavaScript, we want to make the text color of this paragraph to white. So what we can do, we are going to select our element, of course, by the way that I have told you, which is going to be document that we can use both of querySelector for selecting by this CSS syntax right here, or you can use getElementById. And then here we use this style property inside of this element, and again inside of our style we're going to have the property that we want to change. And this property is going to be exactly the property that we have in the CSS. So here we're going to have this color property and we want to set that to white. And we need to set the ID to the A1. And as you see right here, we have changed the CSS. And of course, you can do anything with this. For example, let's say we want to have padding of 30 pixels. You can see that we can change that, and we can change any property of CSS using this style and then the CSS property right here and the new value that we want that property to have right here. And because we can change this CSS, we can have animation using our JavaScript too. So let's say here instead of this P, we have our div with the ID of div right here. And here we want to select that div and here again. So what we need to do, let's say we got this background right here, but we have the width of 20 pixels, let's say, and height of 20 pixels too. And here in our JavaScript, we can use some things to animate. So let's say here we have this setInterval function, and here we're going to have our callback function, and here the time that we want. Let's actually create the time variable right here. Let's make that 200 milliseconds, and this is time. So as you know, we have the parameter of transform in CSS that we can rotate our element using that. So here in our setInterval, we're going to select our element, of course, and then in our style, we use the transform property right here. And then here, we use this rotate to, let's say, 45 degrees. And by using this, you can see that we got changed. And of course, we can have any number right here. But let's say here, we have the defined variable of I with the value of 0. And here in our setInterval, we want to rotate this based on what we have in this I. And each time we increment our I. So it's going to change every 200 milliseconds. And for that, we can use several things to use I as parameter right here. One of the ways is to use this backticks and then use this $sign followed by these parentheses and use this I right here. And now if we check, you can see that we got this result and type of animation right here. And if we change this, we're going to change the speed. So let's make that faster. This is how it's going to look. And of course, we can do even faster than that. And this is how we can create our animations inside of JavaScript. After this, the topic that we want to talk about, let's clear these one first, is going to be our events. So this has this background here, and let's make the color to be white, and we remove this width. So here, let's say we have the first text right here, as you see in the result. After this, let's actually make the text align to be center. So we got this result. And here inside of our JavaScript, we have some events that we can do to our elements React when we do some things with that. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is our onClick. So we want, if we click on this, we change the text, for example. Here we have properties that represent events for us. For example, we have this onClick property that here we can write JavaScript. For example, let's say we want to change the inner HTML. So we can use the selectors, but another way that we can do is do that with this keyword. And by using this, it's going to refer to this tag right here. And then here we make the inner HTML to be second, for example. And because we use double quotations right here, we need to wrap this in single quotations. So if we have this, and here, because we create onClick, if we click on this div right here, you can see it's going to change the text for us. And if we want to do this with our JavaScript, what we need to do is we simply make the onClick property inside of our element to this text right here. So I cut this from here and remove this onClick. And here in JavaScript, we use document.getElementById and pass the ID of div to this, and then onClick. So we assign that with function of change, for example. And now let's create our change function. So we have this function of change, which has no parameters. And here we exactly select this element and make the inner HTML into second right here. And as same as this onClick, we have another property of onmouseover, which is going to do this when we hover on that. So if we reload that, you can see every time we go on that div is going to change the value. And very similar to this one, we have another one of onmouseleave, which when we mouse over, nothing happens. But if we go outside of this box, you can see a change. So when we hover on that, nothing happens. But when our mouse leaves, you can see that it's going to be changed. After this, we have other things like when mouse down, and when we click, this is going to be run. And when we unclick the mouse button that we hold, it's going to change onmouseUp. So I have clicked now, and when I take my finger, you can see it has changed. And we can make this two different attributes of one is onmouseUp and other one is onmousedown. And this one is going to make the inner HTML to collect. And when we leave, it's going to show us the second. So if I click, while I'm clicking, it's going to show this message. And when I release button, we got this second text right here. And after this, we have unfocus and unload events too, which are going to work as same as these are. And another thing that we can do with these events is going to be our event listeners. So here, let's select our div first. So we use document.getElementById. The ID is going to be div. And here we have the property of addEventListener. And this is going to be method, which is going to grab two parameters from us. First one is the event, and the second one is the callback function that we want to run whenever that event has occurred. So let's say here we want to have check for click right here, and then after this we want the function of event. And here let's define our event. So this is going to be function event, no parameters, and let's alert the event word in this function. So whenever we click on this, you can see that we got this alert. And as same as this event, we have events of mouse over, mouse out, and other things that we talked earlier. Please give a like and subscribe to catch next videos.